Let's now talk about how the Weimar Republic struggled with the economy, the way in which Germans made money, their employment, their savings, and so on. This is a crucial factor in the rise of the Nazis. So far, we've looked at the political conditions, we've looked at the stab in the back, we've looked at armistice, we've looked at a whole range of factors which contribute to the rise of extreme nationalism in Germany. But for the average person to get involved in politics often requires some real economic hardships. At one point, some years ago, when people were talking about politics, there was an argument, and it was about, what should we talk about when we are talking to voters? And the reply was, the economy, stupid. So, at the end of the day, often, a lot of historians would argue, it's the economy which impacts most upon changes of democratic systems. So, let's have a look at the way it played out. Germany experienced a whole range of economic problems during the First World War. Germany went into a huge amount of debt during the First World War. The general idea was that they'd pay off those debts when the war was won. By conquering France, by conquering Russia, by conquering Belgium, Germany wouldn't have to worry about how it would fund its debts. When those countries fell, Germany would be wealthy and their debts would look after themselves. Of course, however, Germany lost the war, and in 1919 at the Treaty of Versailles, it was hit with huge bills as a result of the War Guilt Clause and the reparations payments plan. The factors of Germany already having economic difficulties during World War I and the Treaty of Versailles War Guilt Clause reparation situation led to massive economic problems for the Weimar Republic between 1919 and 1923. So if we were to think about those, if you had to write a paragraph about those problems, it would be worth understanding just how huge those reparations bills were, the ability of Weimar to perhaps cope with one year, but repeatedly this was an unachievable goal. We also need to look at the fact that the French occupied the Ruhr, and therefore strikes, there was loss of production, the loss of industrial output, and a massive humiliation of Germany occurred in those early years of the Weimar. We also have hyperinflation, and hyperinflation became a massive problem. The loss of savings that went with it, the loss of purchasing power. If you're on a salary, a fixed wage, hyperinflation destroyed your ability to function in society economically. The increases in unemployment that went with it, the government's defaulting on payments, building of roads, all of those government payments that go ahead, including pensions. The ability of the government during this time was really stretched. Mistakes were made by the Weimar government. They mismanaged the economy, and this made matters even worse for your average German. There was even the fact that in some parts of Germany, starvation was occurring on the street as nutrition levels fell, as people were unable to feed their children, as savings and salaries were stripped away by hyperinflation. Understandably, perhaps, the Freikorps and other extremist groups were extremely active in this time. Political violence was on the streets. Political violence and assassination. Bombings took place across Germany. We saw also emerging non-democratic trends in the way judges and the army and the police and other bureaucratic branches of government function. So, at this early stage of the Weimar era, the economy led to Nazi and other attempts to have revolutions. All of this fed into the sense that the Weimar Republic and democracy would be a failure in German history. In 1924 to 29, a relative stability occurred in Germany. This was built upon a reliance on American loans under what was referred to as the Dawes Plan. The Weimar government was able to create a sense of normalcy across Germany, but it was still a time of great cultural change. For the first time in Germany, democratic expression came through, and we saw the rights of women being asserted, particularly in the workforce. And socially, we even saw the emergence of essentially gay rights movements and movements that recognise the interests of transgender and transvestite behaviours and so on in society, all of which really frightened those people with traditional values in German society. This was all very, very sudden after the times of the Kaiser's Imperial Germany. The intellectual, artistic, literary, scientific, fashion, musical, architectural and other trends and experimentation this time were very, very confronting to many Germans. And the extreme nationalists were quick to point out a Jewish involvement in some of these intellectual movements. Germany during these years was stable, but it still had a great deal of difficulties bubbling along under the surface of society. The Weimar era really became under acute pressure during the Great Depression after 1969. October 29th, 1929's Wall Street crash in the United States and New York led to a global economic disaster. Wherever countries were relying on American loans, they had to deal with the fact that American banks were recalling those loans, demanding immediate repayment so the Americans could sort out their own political problems and their own economic problems. Across Germany, there was massive unemployment. Within a short time, already high levels of unemployment doubled, and they continued to grow between 1929 and 1933. This was the second major economic crisis faced by the average German citizen within 10 years. The Weimar government proved to be unable to cope with this crisis. They raised taxes at a time where perhaps German businesses needed more money. They cut services at a time where the German people needed those services. The German government was so desperate for money, it made decisions that it had trouble coping with as a society. It was in this stage, between 1929 and 1933, that Hitler emerged as a mainstream public figure. He was involved in a number of moves to try and shore up the German economy. This got him a great deal of public attention. During this economic disaster, the public began to turn from the more moderate, centrist political parties of the Weimar Republic into, those more extreme groups like the communists, extreme socialists on the left of politics, and of course the extreme nationalists, the Nazi party on the right. We start to see the emergence of the Nazis once again as an extremist force who are agitating for change and sometimes acting violently. It's important for us to realise that 1933 is a crucial year of elections. And in 1933, the Nazis reach and attain power in the Reichstag.